For more than 1,000 years before the time of Spanish contact, the ancestors of the Hopi and Zuni Indians had built seemingly countless pit house villages and small pueblos in the upper Little Colorado region of eastern Arizona. The Anasazi and Mogollon ruins of this area have attracted much attention from archaeologists over the period of the last century or so, and many of these prehistoric sites will remain available for future investigations because they are located on state and federal lands where they are protected by law. Still, there is nevertheless one very important chapter in the story of cultural development here that may forever remain missing. Beginning earlier, but culminating in the 14th century, populations became concentrated into larger and larger communities, which were located in only those areas where the water supply and soil conditions were sufficient for intensive irrigation agriculture. These large, well-planned, multi-storied pueblos, built around central plazas, may represent the peak of prehistoric cultural development in the Southwest, and they are an important link between the modern Pueblo societies and their deep cultural heritage. In the upper Little Colorado region, most of these large pueblos have already been obliterated because of their locations on what is now private land in developing modern towns. The largest of all of these 14th century communities in the area was Fourmile Ruin in Taylor, a pueblo consisting of well over 600 rooms. This is the story about the ongoing pillage of that site by private investors. Fourmile Ruin is located on a low bluff overlooking the valley of Cottonwood Creek. In the 14th century, the bottomlands of this valley were transformed into rich farmlands by a system of irrigation canals, check dams, and reservoirs. Nearly all traces of this extensive agricultural system have since been erased by periodic flooding and by gravel mine operations of recent times. The ruin has been known to local citizens since the town of Snowflake was first established in the late 19th century, and over the years hundreds of graves in the cemetery area have already been looted. Pot hunters have also besieged the room blocks of the ruin itself, and it seems miraculous that nearly all of the rooms still remain intact. In July of 1987, the site was purchased by a group of private investors who are using heavy equipment in order to thoroughly dig out the contents of each and every room in the Pueblo. This type of big business pot hunting contrasts sharply with the work of the more common relic hunter with a shovel and the efficiency with which information about the past is destroyed. At the rate of about one room per day, the entirety of the site will have been gutted within the next year or so. As of this time, in April 1988, more than 200 room floors have been stripped in search of pottery and other artifacts, and the soil beneath them cored for graves and the offerings that accompany the dead. One thing that has been revealed in all of the hasty digging, and something that has profound implications for the interpretation of history, is the fact that most of the walls are built from adobe bricks. These bricks, if proven to have been formed in frames of fixed dimensions, may be considered to refute the long-standing assumption by archaeologists that this type of construction was introduced by the Spanish in the Southwest. Adobe bricks, when they have been found in prehistoric Pueblo sites, have often been interpreted to be evidence of reconstruction during the historic period. Adobe brick walls have never been found to occur in the extent which can be seen at Fourmile, at any of the prehistoric sites in North America. There are very few doorways in first-story rooms at Fourmile, and most of these had been intentionally closed off in prehistoric times. Instead, access was usually through sandstone slab roof hatches, probably reflecting a concern for defense. The people of Fourmile laboriously shaped thin sandstone slabs for a wide variety of purposes, including the construction of fireboxes, mealing bins for grinding flour, and storage pit covers that keep out the dirt. They even used some of these slabs as surfaces upon which to paint murals depicting terraced rain cloud designs, a fact which clearly suggests an ideology similar to that of the Kachina cult of the Hopi and Zuni of modern times. The architecture of Fourmile in itself contains many clues concerning the social processes involved in Pueblo growth. Walls that are bonded together by overlapping stones or adobes were clearly built during the same construction event, whereas a wall that abuts against the plastered surface of another wall was separately built at a somewhat later date. Adobe walls that were at one time exterior are always seen to have foundations of stone to protect them from ground moisture, but interior walls were commonly constructed without such footings. Stone masonry walls that were exterior, when constructed, are smoothly faced up on the outer faces and rest on footings of rubble in shallow trenches. One key to room function is the type of plaster on the walls. If a room served as a habitation space to live in and cook in, then layer upon layer of whitewashing over ancient smoke stains can usually be seen on its walls. In contrast, thick mud plaster applied to walls in a single coat seems to indicate a concern for keeping pests out of rooms probably used for to store foodstuffs. Where fireboxes are still left intact, identification of charred seeds could reveal what plant foods were prepared in them. Mealing bins by the pair were used to grind seeds into flour of graded textures, and if pollen analysis were possible under the circumstances, it could be ascertained what sorts of plants were important in the diet. Closet-like features occur in many of the rooms, and without scientific analysis, we will never know what these were used for. But even with only the architectural details to work with, much could be learned about how the Pueblo grew and developed over time. Some rooms were added as family units grew. Some new sets of rooms imply the establishment of family dwellings by marriage or immigration. And some larger construction units testify to the needs of the community as a whole to establish new plaza areas. Unfortunately, the thing which the owners of the site are interested in is just the pretty pottery. Even vessels that have been reconstructed from fragments are worth money. Indeed, they even sell the fragments. The pottery types most deeply rooted in the prehistoric traditions of the area consist of black-on-white designs. These designs are dominated by geometric patterns reminiscent of basketry or textiles. But in the pottery type known as Fourmile polychrome, these geometric patterns can be seen to suddenly sprout wings and unfold into life forms such as birds, butterflies, even masked dancers. This pottery is clearly ancestral in design and manufacture to the glazewares made historically by the Zuni potters and the yellowware so characteristic of the Hopi. One of the several factors that makes Fourmile site so critically important to questions about the historical relationship between these two cultures. A surprisingly healthy share of the pottery found at Fourmile is also of salado types, a tradition derived from an area southwest of the upper Little Colorado region. In some Zuni pueblos occupied into historic times, these salado types are associated with cremation burials, suggesting a migration of people and raising questions that could perhaps be answered, in part by research at Fourmile. Many of the graves at Fourmile are in a remarkable state of preservation, often around floors in 3 to 4 story structures. Many other individuals lay strewn right on the floors of their ancient houses, and no research is being conducted to determine if these people came to violent ends, or if the community may have been wiped out by a disastrous disease epidemic of some sort. Amazingly, there is nothing illegal in the state of Arizona about the sort of grave robbing and destruction on private land that is going on at Fourmile ruins. If there were, then Fourmile would not even be the last of the large late prehistoric pueblos in the area to be destroyed. But as the last, with the exception of nearby Shumway ruin, where only half of the main room block was leveled in a recent treasure hunt, Fourmile is a unique resource that should be protected somehow. With still about half of its rooms left intact, Fourmile possesses a wealth of information about the past, about the final chapter in the prehistory of the area, and about the historical connection between the Hopi and the Zuni people, and the evolution of Pueblo society, art, and religion in general. This is to say nothing about what the development of the site as an archaeological theme park could mean to local communities as an attraction to draw tourist dollars and as an educational resource. An artist's reconstruction of Fourmile ruin that was drawn in 1906 shows the layout of the room blocks and of the plaza areas at the site. The smallest of the main room blocks on the southeast side of the large plaza appears in this drawing as having only been 1 row of rooms wide, while in fact this room block is 4 to 5 rows wide and in itself consists of 80 rooms or more. This was the first room block to have been dug out. The second room block hit was the one bordering the main plaza on the southwest side. The roof of this room block was constructed in a series of terraces overlooking the plaza. rising to the height of a high outer wall that provided shelter from the strong prevailing winds. The Pueblo appears to have grown to its vertical limits of 3 or 4 stories in the main room block before a larger plaza was created by the construction of the other room blocks consisting of long rows of single-story rooms. However, this is just a rough and tentative reconstruction from a limited amount of architectural analysis, and it is unfortunate that we may never really know how this late prehistoric community grew and changed over time. I think that it is a public obligation to see that meaning is salvaged from our destruction, in order that those who live and die, then as well as now, do so with recognition. To create value in our own lives, we must respect the value of the past.